Hey everyone, it is Monday, the 23rd of May. We're almost into June. Can you believe that? Today's video is going to probably be a little bit longer. There's been a lot of stuff happening kind of everywhere, but in particular in my area, New England. There's been a lot of bad calls, a lot of bad car accidents, drownings. The weather's warmer. Just bad stuff's been happening. And um, because of what I do, because I literally talk to people from all over the country, literally all the time, um, and go to conferences and just everything that I do, I'm hearing this is really starting to become a trend. And the trend that I'm talking about is not talking about it. We are we've been making some headway, with the stigma with mental illness and mental health and PTSD. Um, but there's still, the overall, as I always like to say, the overall is we've made progress, right? But then you have these pockets, some are pretty large, where things just aren't changing. We're not talking about it. People aren't utilizing resources. People aren't taking the next step with resources. And so today I wanted to talk, and again, I apologize if this video goes over my normal 8 to 10 minute thing. It may be closer to 15 because I got a lot to say, and I'm not going to pull my punches today. So I'm just going to lay it out there. For those who are new to my social media accounts, who are seeing these videos for the first time, who haven't been following my history or what I've done or what I do, I'm going to lay it out real quick. I grew up in a firefighting and military family. I have roots that go back to 1875 in the fire service, and military roots to go back as far as World War One. I like to joke that I was potty trained at gunpoint, which isn't a joke. We didn't talk about the stuff that my family was doing on the job. And because of that, there was alcoholism, there was abuse, a lot of abuse, all forms of abuse that I had to endure, and other members of my family apparently endured during their time. There was family dynamics that fell apart. Marriages didn't last. People lost custody of kids, divorces. And then me, particularly, my entire family fell apart and cut me off, all because of what I was showing at the time with my undiagnosed PTSD. As I've been making this journey in the last several years, more particular the last 12 months, I've realized that, yes, my story is the shit show end of the PTSD spectrum. It's like when I joke to people, I always be like, yeah, it's like my life's like the Kennedys, right? If it's going to happen and it's bad, it's going to happen to me. And that really is true, apparently. The more and more I talk about what I've been through, and the more and more I share what I've been through and talk to people and try to help people, the more and more I realize that, yeah, my situation is very unique, and it is not the typical of what happens out there. Most people go through their career, and yeah, they have a couple of bad calls, they hang on. But like a lot of people, even people I'm close with, and I know he won't be upset for me mentioning his name, but Brian, he realized he needed to get help, fought it a little bit, but got help and has been very successful in his healing. For a lot of us, that's not the case. And because of my shit show PTSD, that was not my case. And because we didn't talk about it on the original department I was part of, and all the private EMS groups that I was employed by, it was the suck it up buttercup, or it's part of the job, or, well, this is what you signed on for, or get over it, or here, have a beer, or 12. My life was all but destroyed, and at different times almost ended by my own hands. Folks, it has become very evident and apparent in recent times, so far before the summer has even really officially kicked off this year in 2022, that we still have a lot more work to do. And I can tell you right now that I am the poster child for what happens if you do not handle your shit, if you do not talk about this stuff, if you sit there at your firehouse and you just did a dead kid call and all you do is tell dark jokes and don't actually handle what's bothering you, and you sit there with your stomach churning, ready to throw up, and you dismiss yourself because, oh, I'm going to go smoke a butt, and you actually go and puke behind the firehouse. Those kind of things are going to catch up to you. They will. And if it doesn't end your life, it's going to end your marriage. If it doesn't end your marriage, it's going to end your finances. If it doesn't end your finances, it's going to end your relationship with your kids. You get the point. This shit catches up to you. It doesn't have to. The fire service in particular, and I say this because I know it wholeheartedly, my own personal experience, my family's experience growing up in it, the fire service in particular is one of the biggest group of the most stubborn people I've ever met in my life. Even to this day, short of some people who've only been on 3 to 7 years or so, most of the people in the fire service are very stubborn. And unfortunately, folks, this isn't like the cancer thing where you may get it or it may affect you, which not everyone gets cancer. You have to have a certain chemical DNA makeup in order to necessarily get occupational cancer. We all have a brain. We are all human and we all have emotions. The job's going to affect you. You may not get PTSD. You may not even have anger issues. You know something? You may not even drink. But there's going to be a part of your life that's affected in a negative way by the job. And that's okay. Not dealing with it is the part that's not okay. Being complacent with the fact that every time you go to work and you have a bad call that you got to drive home drinking in order to walk in your house with a smile on your face, or maybe you just come home not drinking and you just avoid everyone in your house. Or maybe you just work 80 hours at one job and 40 at another so you don't have to deal with your family or deal with reality. I understand, as I lived it, that yeah, we don't get paid very well, but I also know for a fact that none of us have to work 120 hours a week unless we decided to destroy 3 marriages and we're paying a bunch of child support in order to survive. We don't. I'm sorry. I was working private EMS in a municipal fire job and I lived in a $500,000 house. You can do it. I also had 3 other incomes. Like, it's a lot of what people do in this job and in this field, guys and gals, is avoidance. And if we keep avoiding this, we're going to keep seeing the numbers go up. And unfortunately, some of the only numbers being reported are the suicide rates. And they're only at 40%. You look up any number right now at firefighters and cops being, having, suicide, and they're saying, cops like 163, firefighters like 140, whatever it is, 120. Those are at 40% reporting. And that's just the suicides. What about the divorces? What about the marriages that stay together that shouldn't? And I don't mean shouldn't like you get a divorce because whatever, but shouldn't because they're so horrible because you're not dealing with what you need to be dealing with, that the safest thing to do would be to get a divorce. Folks, I'm not by any stretch of the imagination cured. I still go through a gauntlet of bad shit a lot because of what I've been through. I spent up until I was about 40 years old, repressing so much of the trauma from my life. I'm not even 44 yet. It's going to take me a while to get there. My point of this is there is no magic pill. You're not going to go and walk into a therapist's office or a coaching session or get inpatient or get ECT or do EMDR and the next day everything in your life is right as rain. That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. And one of the biggest things we need to start changing is this philosophy that, oh, hey guy, I went and did EMDR and it's just everything's great. It isn't. I guarantee you that person who's telling you that had a few rough weeks after, if not, is still dealing with stuff. And that's okay because they're talking about it. This job, and when I talk to people, when I do videos or podcasts, where my perspective is always the firehouse and the ambulance. I don't know the lifestyle behind the badge of being a cop, and I don't know lifestyle being dispatcher. My mother was a dispatcher, but that was towards the end of me and her talking. So I only know the perspective of the firehouse and the ambulance. And I can tell you that it will affect you. It will catch up. Even people who have recently told me that the job doesn't affect them, now at our conversation in the building, I find out they've had drinking problems in the past and they've admitted to having the drinking problem. The job affects us. We do a job that 99% of society cannot do or will not do. And it's not a very it's a rewarding job on like a personal level. I always felt like I did something good. And I'm sure everyone out there listening will understand that. But the pay ain't great. The benefits aren't always great. The work schedule can be pretty good on the fire side of things. But the job itself is very taxing. And whether you work for, the New York City Fire Department and you're doing thousands and thousands of runs a year, or you work for a small municipality and you're doing 100 calls a year, it doesn't matter. It only takes that one bad call. And for a lot of us, we come to the job already with baggage. We already have trauma and we're human. So we're going to experience other things. And life right now is not the easiest thing, no matter who you are. Life is tough right now. And we're seeing a lot of bad stuff in society. And we do the job that most of the society doesn't want to do. And again, or can't do. We are the 1%ers. We are the protectors. We are the helpers. We are the saviors. We are the warriors. No matter how humble you are, own that. That is who we are. It does not mean that we cannot talk about what we do for work. It doesn't mean that every single day you walk into work, you got to be like, oh, whatever, whatever it is. But if you want to, why can't you? We're literally dealing with life and death situations, the losses of property, horrible situations, living conditions of people, abuse, domestic violence, social upheaval. I mean, everything, all the bad parts of the Bible, right? We deal with as a job, 24, 36, 48 hours at a whack, 8 hours, one call, whatever it is. We're dealing with this. How are we supposed to sit there and not expect it to bother us somehow? Now, folks, I know all sorts of people. I have friends all the way from the FDNY to Los Angeles County to Florida to small towns like Ashby, Mass, with like 2,500 people in them. Like I know firefighters who, quote unquote, are the salt of the earth, and guys who have been to one fire in the last 12 months. One bad call in the last 12 months, opposed to one every single shift. Like I full gauntlet, full spectrum of everyone. And I can tell you right now, the job affects even the toughest, biggest mustache wearing, burnt up helmet guy that there is. It doesn't matter how rugged your gear looks. It doesn't matter, how many tetrahedrons you've had to replace in your helmet. It doesn't matter if you wore gloves before gloves were a thing, or didn't wear gloves back in the EMS days. And, you used to not have to worry about HIV, whatever it is, whatever your tough guy slogan is that you like to throw around. It's not going to protect you when the demons come back knocking on your door. Because eventually, if we don't talk about this stuff, and eventually, if we don't deal with this stuff, they're going to come knocking and they're going to take what's theirs. And if you're not prepared for it, they're going to win. And I can tell you this through experience. I know several other people that can tell you this through experience, because that's who I hang around with these days. There are a lot of people who have been there, who have been toe to toe with destiny, if you will, with fate, what could have been, and have decided to turn that around, and have decided to become transparent and put their shortcomings and their failures as a man or a woman out there for everyone to see, so other people don't make the same mistakes. I always tell people, don't be like me when I was on the job. Do not be like Keith Hanks when he was on the job. I was a prick, and I was a prick because I held it all in. People wanted to work with me because I was a black cloud and I saw the worst of the worst whenever I was on duty. But no one wanted to really work with me because I was an asshole. I knew what I was doing, but I was a prick. And we all know that guy. I knew another Keith Hanks, because there's always another Keith Hanks. There's always that person who's really bitter and angry, but really good at their job. You ever wonder why? You ever wonder why maybe they're so angry? Well, this is why. People aren't born inherently evil or angry. We all deserve to be happy. We all deserve to feel love. And we all deserve to love the job, because this is one hell of a career to love. I still love the job. I know in my heart that the job for me, frontline, is gone. And for a lot of men and women, that is the case. But I love the job. This is one of the best jobs in the world, if not the best job. Why can't we make it and keep it that way by just talking about the things we see? Why can't we navigate the first responder lifestyle better? Why can't we be able to have a conversation with our spouses? It doesn't mean you got to come home from the firehouse and be like, yeah, I pulled 3 dead kids out of a 3-decker today. You don't need to tell them that. My wife would never understand that. And I met her in the ambulance, and she's now an ER nurse at one of the busiest hospitals in the state. She still wouldn't understand that. And it doesn't need to be told to her. But why can't I tell my wife my feelings? Why do I got to still have my long coat and hip boots on when I come home to my wife? Why can't I leave that shit at the station and come home and be like, hey, you know something? I'm really sad right now. I saw 3 dead kids. I don't need to go into specifics on what that was, but why can't we embrace our emotions? We're human. Unless anyone wants to raise their hand and admit to being a cyborg, being sent back to kill Sarah Connor, I really don't want to hear that no one has emotions and that shit doesn't affect them. I'm a pretty tough guy. I'm a big guy, and I've always been regarded as a guy's guy. I'm not tooting my own horn, but that's the way it is. And I have emotions. I cry. I have to. Otherwise, what I have in my life right now would not exist. I've been on the brink of losing everything. And that's because at the time when I almost lost stuff, or I did lose stuff, it's because I wasn't talking about it. It's a conversation, folks. Is what it is. This job needs to be spoken about more often. And I'm not saying that we all need to go out and tell Joe shit the rag man what our job is and how bad it is. It's not about measuring dicks. It's not about, oh, what was your worst call? It's about being open to the fact that, yeah, this stuff can affect us because we're humans and we have a full spectrum of emotions, including sadness. It's okay to be sad once you hit 18 years old and become an adult. You can still be sad. We see sad stuff as first responders. We hear sad stuff as first responders, and we smell and get just developed into terrible situations. One of the things I always tell people is that it wasn't always the dead people. It wasn't always the bad fires. Sometimes it was walking into an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment in Lawrence, where 25 people were living, and none of them had on new clothes or clean clothes. There was no food in the house, stuff like that. Those are the things that sometimes weigh a little bit heavier on me than the dead kid in the car or the burned up grandma. And trust me, folks, there's plenty of those stories. But sometimes it's not that stuff. A lot of us are fortunate, I guess, quote unquote, air quotes, to be married or in a relationship with someone who's somehow involved in the first responder world. A lot of us marry nurses. A lot of us find our spouse on the job somehow. So they have an idea. But unless they've done your job, they really don't. And with a lot of people that I've talked to, even like some of the nurses who didn't do ambulance work or pre-hospital care, they don't know what it's like to have to walk into someone's life. And there is a difference. There is a difference between just doing a bad call and being immersed in someone's personal life over and over again. And because we end up doing that, because we respond to someone's life, their worst day potentially of their life, we're being immersed in their life. And we're comparing it to our own, even if we don't realize it. A lot of us are comparing it to our own. We're making direct lines to our own shit. And for me, because I grew up very poor, a lot of the cities I worked in, there was a lot of poverty. And so every time I went to a real shitty situation where like kids were wearing 2-day-old, rinsed out diapers that shouldn't have been, it struck a nerve and it built up. And it built up and built up for over 2 decades because I didn't deal with it. It is as simple as talking about it. And I'm sure there's going to be some of you out there that are going to read this video and be like, wow, he's got balls. And I'm going to tell you, yeah, I do. It's a joke, but it's not. I'm always the biggest dick in the room. And I have no problem owning that, because I will, if I need to be to get my point across, I will be as blunt as I need to be. Because folks, I don't want anyone to have to follow in the footsteps I did. I don't want anyone to take the journey that I did if it can be avoided. I've lost just about everything you can lose, up to and almost including my own life. And it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't. We just have to talk about it. It's not that big of a deal. The military, thank God, is getting slightly better at it. And honestly, I think all of us need to owe them a big thank you, because unfortunately, due to the war in the Middle East over the last 20 years since 9/11, some of the veterans come back, and then, the work the military has done with debriefing these guys and gals has, dripped down into the first responder world, because a lot of them come back and, work right into the fire, EMS, or police. And thankfully, they've done sort of a lot of the foundation work for us when it comes to this. But we have a long way to go. A long way. Suicides aside, we all know probably at least 5 or 6 people right off the top of the bat that have been divorced, that aren't allowed to see their kids, that drink, maybe even drug, that are always pissed off. And that's probably a low number. I could probably think of 20. I have like 1,500 people on my friend list on Facebook. I could probably think of probably 300 or 400. And that's awful. We don't need to be like that, folks. We don't. I'm still learning, and I'm still learning how to navigate it. But I'm learning that talking about it and having conversations is the way we deal with it. You don't need to lay on a therapist's couch and have them holding the watch over your head and talking about, every little thing. It doesn't have to be that way. Sometimes that is helpful. I've been down that road and it worked for me. I've used just about every resource there is when it comes to mental wellness that's out there. And again, maybe some of you will see this as a sales pitch, but the biggest thing that I get behind is the coaching part, the life coaching. And the biggest reason for that is because in most recent times, I've become someone who has realized that I get the most satisfaction and stick to the results I get when I make them. And we're all like that. The self-gratification we get from completing a task ourselves or making that change in our life is the most substantial and the most longest lasting. And that is what coaching will do. And that is what I got through coaching when I became, when I got coached and then became a coach. I learned how to use all that, because it's not just the trauma stuff. It's all the other facets of our lives. Everything that can be with the first responder lifestyle, we can deal with through coaching. It's about navigating this lifestyle. It's about taking what could be maybe only a 10-year career, because you're just going to sit there and bottle it up and not talk about things and let it affect every part of your personal life, to maybe turning that into a 25-year career, because you're navigating it correctly. You're setting goals. You're putting up boundaries with things you maybe need to, or you're opening up conversations with those you care about, including coworkers, so you can have a healthier life. I saw a meme the other day, which was kind of funny. It was like this blacked out like tweet, I think. And it was like, how do all you other guys deal with the stress of life, or something like that? And the answer was something to the effect of keep it bottled up and have early onset cardiac issues, including a heart attack when you're in your 40s. It's not wrong. It's kind of funny, but it's not wrong. I've already had a cardiac cath, and it's because I kept my heart rate at a pretty elevated level for so long that I had a complete cardiac team convinced I had a blockage. But it was all my symptoms from my PTSD causing this shit. Like, folks, this stuff doesn't just affect your wallet or your marriage or whatever. It can affect everything. How many guys we know work 40 years, get off the job, and drop dead too in their retirement? Like, everything. Why aren't we talking about when guys get occupational cancer? Why aren't we setting up conversations and resources for those men and women and their families? Cancer is a punch to the gut. It has riddled my family on both sides. It is not an easy thing to deal with, especially when that person dies a very slow, painful death from it. And yet we're not dealing with the consequences from it. We're still not even talking about that. We'll talk about cancer, and it's accepted to clean your gear now, right? But we won't talk about setting up supports and resources for the people going through it, including their family. Like, it's all tied in, guys. All of it. We have to talk about this stuff. We are at a breaking point. We just got through a 2-year-long pandemic that some are trying to hold on to, that we're trying to get through. And a lot of people who toughed it out, quote unquote, and I do use that term loosely, are now realizing that they may be broken. And it's not just the first responder world now. There's a lot of other professions in society that the pandemic has made it very clear to them they have a lot of issues, underlying issues that were brought to light because of the pandemic, and the pandemic gave them issues. Folks, now is the time. We have to make this change. We have to be the change that happens. And if it's not for us, if you're one of those people who has to help everyone else and you can't take anything for yourself and you can't be selfish, quote unquote, for one time, then do it for your kids. Do it for the next generation. If you don't have kids, do it for your nieces, your nephews, your cousins' kids, whatever it is, your neighbors' kids. The girl at Dunkin's that's a teenager that's really nice and you really like her and you hope she does well in life. Do it for her. If you won't do it for yourself, do it for the next generation. We've got to start having these conversations because it's killing people, it's destroying marriages, it's destroying lives, it's causing people to drop dead in firehouses. All you got to do is pick up your Facebook and you can see that 3 FDNY members dropped dead at the firehouse since Christmas. This shit is happening. The job is taking its toll with different masks on, whether it's cardiac stuff, stress, domestic violence, alcoholism, suicide, depression, anxiety, mental illness, PTSD, whatever it is, it's manifesting in different ways and it's taking its toll on the job. And those of you that are still in the job or connected to the job know that retention's at an all-time low, applications are at an all-time low. The state of New Hampshire is down 60% on their statewide test for firefighters. Little birdie told me that the Mass OEMS has, I think, 3,500 or 5,000 less people renewing their license this past April. I mean, these are some significant numbers, folks. Why can't we just make it better? Why do we got to walk away from it because we don't want to talk? Why can't we just fix it? By having a conversation. We just need to talk about it. I've spent a lot of your time here. I've been a little aggressive and assertive. I didn't mean to hurt anyone's feelings. Maybe I did. Maybe that's a lie. Maybe I need to hurt feelings in order to make a change happen. But we need to make that change happen, folks. Or there's going to be no one to change and no reason to change because everyone's just going to be gone. And right now we're having a hard enough time getting people in the door to be the saviors, to be the protectors, to be the helpers, to be the warriors. That maybe we need to start fixing this now. And we need to start fixing this with people who are still on the job and those of us who still love the job, who want to make it better. It's all about teamwork in the public safety, right? Well, we need to be a team. We need to start hitting this head on. Now, I push the coaching thing. I always push the coaching thing because it's not therapy. And I'm going to end this with saying that if you want to know more about that, just reach out to me or go to First Responder Coaching Group. It's on Facebook, or go to 1strrespondercoaching.org and check out the website. Start taking the proactive approach to the first responder lifestyle, folks, one way or the other. So we don't have this affecting the next generation or the next 3. Because we already know it's affected every generation since this incorporation, whenever all this started back in the 1800s. We have to make the change. I love you all. Thank you for watching the video. I'm going to try to get more frequent with these. Life is very busy, as all of you are aware. For those of you in the Ohio, Kentucky area, I will be down there this Wednesday for Thursday's symposium. So if any of you guys are attending that, come check me out. I'll be running a booth down there for first responder coaching. And I'll talk about anything with the job as well. Once we get done talking about coaching, of course. But would love to meet some of you who are down that area if you want to pop in or if you're going. And if you guys need any resources, you want to talk more about what I've talked about here, send me a message. I answer all my messages. It takes me a while to get to them, but send me a message. We got to make the change, guys. Let's do it. Let's start today. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.